Hey, how are y'all doing? Monday here, starting another clear day outside. But if we look off to the west here in this part of Texas, we can see moisture starting to head back north along the I-35 corridor. See that grayish tinge out there. But the only thing in our sky right here, where I'm at right now, is just the crescent moon, and you can see at the very bottom there, Venus. But, of course, things are going to get pretty busy here. This is the Texas surface analysis, and you can see we're starting to pick up that southerly flow from the Gulf. 60s dew points starting to make their way inland. Here's the 60-degree isotherm kind of running like this, all the way up the Rio Grande and up into the Austin and Houston area. So that moisture is starting to come back up north. Now let's look at the big picture here. This is the thickness forecast for valid about right now. So this is going to be, let's see here, 01Z. This is the GFS forecast of thickness, which is these red lines, and pressure, which is the black lines. And you can see the big feature that we have is this big low pressure area in the Dakotas. And we've also got a thickness gradient across the Rockies, this area right here. So out ahead of that, that's where we place the surface front. If we go to the surface data, it can be very hard to find that front. That's very typical when it goes through the Rockies. You have stations at many different elevations, all the way from 2,000 up to 8,000 feet, so that can really make a mess. And you can see that I see 60 degrees here in southeast Utah, and I see 58 here at Alamosa, Colorado. So where would you put the front? It can be, this is a pretty good example right here of where the thickness chart can really come in and help you. So we can refer back to that, and we can see it's roughly aligned from eastern Colorado through maybe about Albuquerque, and then arcing back to around the Phoenix area. So we can go into the surface chart and kind of draw that in there, and then we can monitor individual stations for changes over time. Out ahead of it, though, lee side trough starting to take hold from the high plains of Colorado down to eastern New Mexico. And we're starting to get a bit of a dry line forming along there, so like roughly in this area. If we had a little bit more moisture, we would be primed for possibly some thunderstorms in that area. But the return moisture is pretty weak at this time right now, so that's still a ways off. So this is the streamline analysis showing the main baroclinic low up in Montana, and then this little area where the contours, where the streamlines are kind of packed, that's going to be the front most likely. And then the rest of it down here is probably just your lee side trough. So everything in the U.S. right now is reacting to that system coming out of the Rockies. So that's going to be the main story for the next day or two. As far as down south, of course, we're watching Matthew. Matthew right now, as of the 8 o'clock update from NHC, they've got still Category 4 with 120 knot winds. That pressure has come down a little bit, down to 934 millibars. So that's getting into the classic strong hurricane range, I guess if you want to call it that. Definitely one for the history books here. 934 is quite a ways down there. The satellite loop is looking like this. If you follow the course of this eye, you can see a very slight north-northeastward movement. So this is about 010 to 020 degrees relative to true north. Now that probably doesn't represent the long-term movement. This might be what we call a trochoidal movement, or what we call a wobble. And you can see the asymmetric nature of the eye wall. See right here you have a lot of very cold cloud tops, this is very strong convection in this area, and not so much right here. So as a result, you tend to get the eye of the storm trying to chase this area where there's a much stronger release of latent heat. And as that spirals around, you get kind of a wobbling effect there too. So we can't really rely on the satellite data from minute to minute to pick out the overall movement of the storm, and that's where models really help out. And I'll show you one other tool here that we use. That's the mean layer winds. So this is an average of the winds from the lower levels to the upper levels. And you can see here on this website, we can pick different depths, different layers. Now there's a relationship between tropical storm intensity and the wind depth we want to look at that's relevant. Now this chart here is calibrated in terms of central pressure. So these are going to be your weak hurricanes down to what we have right now, which is in the bottom category. So you can see we're kind of almost down in the Katrina range. I think Katrina might have been like down in the 800s maybe. So probably quite a ways to go there. But the main thing that you can take away from this chart here, this scale here on the left side, this is height. So this is going to be your surface. 500 millibars is going to be about 5 kilometers. 200 millibars is going to be up at 39,000 feet, which is about 12 kilometers. So when we're dealing with weak storms, tropical depressions, that kind of thing, we like to look at a very shallow layer in the low levels. But as we get into stronger types of storms, we want to take a deeper cut from basically 5,000 all the way up to about 30,000 feet. And when we get into our strongest category storms, we want to focus on about 10,000 up to about 40,000 feet. So a deeper and higher swath of the atmosphere. So as you might guess, changes in intensity can lock you into different types of steering flow. So we kind of want to look at all of these. So what does this show for today? Let me see if I can squeeze this down so you can follow it. I don't think we can really do that. Let's see. Okay, let's take a very shallow wind. Let's try 700 850, which is about 5 to 10,000 feet. This is what we use on weak storms. So I'm going to select that. You can see that the steering flow would take that hurricane pretty far to the west, all the way out to the Gulf and into Florida. Now if we want to take a more median cut, say from 850 to 400, that's going to be about 5,000 to 25,000 feet, we get more of a northward movement up to the Florida coast and up to the Carolina coast. And if we go with our deepest cut, our deepest highest one, 200 to 700, that's from about 10,000 up to 40,000 feet, we get more of a northeastward movement. So as you might guess, the movement we're going to get on Matthew is going to depend a lot on which layer is applicable in this case. So right now this suggests a northeastward movement, but we are seeing different results on the models, and I'll show you that real quick. They have steered things back to the west a bit. So we've got our hurricane moving up through the straits here between Cuba and Haiti. Looks like mostly just this peninsula of Haiti is going to take the main brunt. Looks like Jamaica is out of the woods. The strongest flow, the strongest winds relative to the hurricane, that's going to be on the right side of the track, and that's also where the threat of brief tornadoes is concentrated, on the front side and to the right, mostly in the outer spiral bands for that. So then we grazed the coast of Cuba, and then yesterday we were looking at the models focusing on a track kind of like this. So we are back out to the west, in line with what the American models had a couple days ago. So we've got the European model, taking it all the way up to the Florida coast. Same thing with the GFDL, which is the Great Navy model, and the GFS. And the only outliers we have on this side are the official forecast. I guess they're kind of hedging on the solution. And the COAMPS model and the HWRF, which is this other track right here. And here's the Canadian model, kind of taking a median cut right there. So things are kind of leaning to the west, and I guess we're looking for whether we're going to have any consistency with that from run to run. I think everybody's waiting on the 0Z data. But let me show you one thing here, the performance of the model. Let me run this back to 2 days ago. Let's see what the models were forecasting. Well, look here, you had the GFS going west. The GFS performance has actually been pretty impressive. And it was the GFDL that kind of flip-flopped and went back to the east. The European model kind of stayed east. Likewise, actually you can see the European model started to go for a little bit of recurvature back towards Florida, a little bit of westward motion. Same on the UK Met model. So it kind of looks like the big international global models are really what excelled here. The GFS, the European, and the UK models. And those are the most sophisticated models running on some of the fastest supercomputers. So how does that apply to our situation? That means I would probably take a lot of stock in the European forecast, in the GFS forecast, and in the UK forecast. That's this one that actually makes a landfall here near Vero Beach and Cape Kennedy. And the GFDL model is also going for that too. So this could actually have a big impact for later in the week, around Wednesday through Friday night. So basically anything from Florida out to the Carolinas is probably going to be under the gun here for this upcoming week. All right, let's see if I had any other charts set up here. I'm getting kind of lost here. I did pull up not that one. Let me go back here. Yeah, there's the Jamaican radar. That's the first radar plot that we've had so far, and there you can definitely make out the eye. So you can kind of correlate that with your satellite data to kind of gauge the performance on the model in the short term, and that's especially when the satellite data is not revealing much in the way of a definite center. You can refer back to the radar and pinpoint that. And also with the drop zone data, that kind of thing, you can really pin things down. So we're going to see this move north, and that should come within range of the Guantanamo ASRS-4 radar, probably for our webcast tomorrow, so we'll check that out. So we're going to use some air traffic control radar to take a look at that storm. Intensities on Matthew are looking like this. In this case, we're looking at the central pressure. Now the main global models are way down here at the bottom. Lowest pressure is towards the bottom, and increasing time out to day 5 is from left to right. So you can see that we have a little bit of deepening over the next 18 hours. And then pressures kind of rise at the 48-hour point, and that's mostly due to ingestion of dry air off Cuba. This is, and of course, friction from the mountains. So that's going to kind of degrade the circulation of the storm as it crosses that. Then it gets back out into the deeper, warmer waters, and you see pressures tend to fall on a lot of these models, and they bottom out somewhere out from day 3 to day 5. So it looks like the storm is going to be big news as it gets out into the area off the Florida coast. And then we'll see what happens there. Okay, so I think that's going to take us into... Oh yeah, I'll show you one thing here. The Japanese are also dealing with a super typhoon right now, Chaba, which is off the coast of Okinawa here. And they've got winds 135 knots gusting to 165. Now 165 knots in miles per hour, that's going to be, let's see, 16 plus 8, 24. plus 165, that's going to be 189 miles an hour, so almost 200 mile an hour winds in that thing. And this is what it looks like on the Japanese radar right here. So it's detecting that northwest of Okinawa. And I'll show you one very cool thing that they have on their radar. Let me animate this real quick. This may take just a second because we're using some of the bandwidth here to stream the weathercast. Maybe while that loads, I'm going to go back to this panel here and check that out. But they're bringing that basically through the strait between Japan and Korea, so that's good for them. That's going to keep the impact of the storm way down, mostly affecting Jeju-do Island right there. Okay. So this is the animation of the Japanese radar. Look at here. See, the whole presentation turns purple. That's actually forecast radar. They've got a model integrated into the system that actually forecasts in the very short term. So here it comes up. We're on observed data. Then it switches over to forecast data right there. So that's very neat. You know, I kind of wish we had something like that in the U.S. Maybe we do, but maybe I just haven't found it yet. I think the closest we have that I know of is the HRRR, the High Resolution Rapid Refresh, but that's more on the scale of hours, not quite minutes like what we're seeing here, so that's very neat. So, guys, let's check out the forecast here. Let me center the map. Got to keep things from becoming too chaotic here. And I think we're just about set there. So what we're looking at right now is pressure and thickness. This is the GFS forecast. So this is what we have right now. You can see the red thickness lines indicating the cold front extending down into Arizona, warm front up to Manitoba like that. And we've got that cool Canadian high bringing some mild dry air into the central and eastern U.S. So here's what happens for the rest of the week. That system in the Dakotas moves mostly to the northeast, so it goes up here into Manitoba in the Hudson Bay area, and you can see it dragging the cold front into Kansas, into Iowa, down to New Mexico on Thursday. So that'll gradually sink southward, and we'll probably be looking at a chance of storms in Oklahoma and Kansas around Friday and Saturday. You can see the thickness packing coming pretty close together, so we're seeing cyclogenesis in that area. So Florida, not Florida, quite a ways from Florida, Kansas is going to become very active here around Friday and Saturday, maybe some storm chasing action. I'm going to try to hook up with some of those guys and see if I can like pipe in some chase footage when we do these things. That'll be kind of cool. But of course I got to clear that with them and make sure I'm not stealing footage. So anyway, by Friday night and Saturday, cold front comes down. It looks like probably a squall line through here. And then that moves through the Midwest on Saturday. And here comes Matthew coming. The GFS solution is bringing that into the South Carolina coast, making landfall right there. Of course, that could vary to the east or west one way or the other. So we're looking at landfall basically around Saturday. And then we start getting that linked up with the cold air sinking down south. So this is going to change over the circulation to a more baroclinic, a more extratropical type of thermal structure. And look at this 540 thickness line. See this coming down from Canada? 540 line is kind of a rule of thumb for a changeover from rain to wintry precipitation. So you can see that coming all the way down into New York, down to Pennsylvania. So depending on how much wraparound there is on the backside of this, we could see some wintry precipitation in Ontario, Quebec, and adjoining U.S. states in the northeast, probably New England too. So all the way down to New Hampshire. This is Monday or Tuesday, and very deep system comes up into the Canadian Maritimes. And then behind that we get a pretty good kick of cold air southward, should keep us kind of cool here in the central U.S. And another system getting geared up in the Pacific. Things are becoming very active out there. See, let me run this back here. See how we got high pressure mostly dominating the Pacific out here? Things completely flip-flop for next week. See, now we've got a big old, very broad low-pressure area system, low-pressure area out of that region, so that should start bringing a lot of cold air eastward onto the Pacific coast and keep things kind of stormy there. So succession of fronts coming inland. Here comes another one coming into Oregon around October 14th. So eventually those are going to work down into the lower 48 and get things kind of active. And that looks to be about it for the forecast. So probably just kind of on the mild, cool side until mid-month. Okay, let me check the chat here, see what's going on. Say hello to the usual people, Mike and Ron, and let's see. Katrina was down to 920. Yeah, I appreciate that. For some reason, I was thinking it was down to 890. I'm probably thinking about what was that one that came through here at 88? That was Gilbert. That was pretty low, and I don't know, my mind is drawing a blank here. But anyway, we're probably not going to see levels like that with this storm. I think we're just going to be kind of flirting with 939 to 920 here. Okay, I think I am done. So I appreciate you watching. We'll check in tomorrow and we'll see the hurricane coming through Cuba and the Straits, and we'll get to see it on the radar, and we'll see exactly what we're looking at for possible landfall between Florida and the Carolinas. So we're going to be watching for that. So I will see you tomorrow at the usual time, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for watching.